Welcome to the Week 3 football podcast from the LA City section. Connor Morissette alongside Keith DeMolder. Keith, Week 2, a lot happened in the LA City section. Let's get right into our top 10. Torres, that's the team who I know you're very high on. They stay at number 10 for a small school. Explain to our viewers why you think they're in the top 10.
Right, so it's really about one man. Taquan Gilmore had an unbelievable game. They beat Hollywood High 43-23. Here's his stat line, folks. 295 yards. 5 touchdowns on just 15 carries. Also had 2 tackles for loss, 8 tackles and a pick. The guy can do it all on the offensive side as well as the defensive side. Huge win. They're playing Belmont next week, so we'll see how they do.
So that's number 10 for you. Torres at 9. We have Venice. I was at their game at El Camino Real High School last week, and it was a big win for them. They get a defensive goal line stand to win the game. Bryson Tremaine was huge in that one. They get the W, so they replace El Camino Real in the top 10. They're at number 9, and they're doing this all with their backup quarterback, so imagine what's going to happen when Luka DeMont gets back. They're a team I see with a lot of potential.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. And obviously that goal line stand, it's such a great thing to see, especially if you're a coach, just to see these guys be resilient late in games and be able to hold an offense that could have won the game easily.
At number 8, Banning, they beat Southgate to move back into the top 10. They were in the preseason top 10, then lost big week 1, fell out of it. Now they're back. Banning at number 8.
Yeah, I like that pick because Banning, we had them a little underrated last week. They had a big win, so they're coming into this week with a lot of momentum.
At 7, Carson, they beat Southeast. They played in Hawaii. Their first game got smacked around a little bit. So really, it's tough to judge a team week 1, A, because you don't know who's who really, and B, if they're playing a team from Hawaii. I think that kind of shows, well, yeah, you lost big, but the fact that you're going on the road, the coaching staff sees potential in this team, and they get a big win over Southeast, so they move up all the way to number 7 in our poll for the first time this year.
Yeah, 66-14 is nothing to be embarrassed about. That was a huge win for them over Southeast, so we should see how they do this week. Maybe their offense is even better. Remains to be seen.
At 6, Westchester, they won over Inglewood to propel them back into our poll at 6.
Yeah, Jonathan Murphy, although he had 3 picks, he had a great game, 197 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also, the running game added 171 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. The PAT, obviously, it's a problem for them. They didn't get as many as they would like in their last game against Inglewood. That said, they pulled out the W over a good team, so we'll see how they do this week.
Now on to the top 5. Crenshaw returns into our top 5. They fell to 9 after a tough week 1 game, but this past week they beat West Covina to move up to number 5.
Yeah, a great non-conference win over West Covina. Going on the road is always hard, but a 35-7 win, great right there.
Top 4 looks exactly the same as it did last week. Dorsey stays put at 4. They didn't have a game this past week. Coming up, though, this week in Week 3, they're taking on Sarah. We'll pick that one a little bit later in the podcast for you. I think that's a real tough game for them, but they've had 2 weeks to prepare for it, so we'll see how they bounce back after a tough loss to Calabasas Week 1.
Yeah, having the bye week, so crucial for a team, just in the ability to overcome a loss and get ready for a nice game at Sarah.
3, Palisades, they're continuing to roll. They crushed Sylmar. That's 2 big wins for them. Baraka Beckett, Sear Riley. I know Sear Riley's brother you're very high on too. That's a good team.
Yeah, C.R. Riley actually is Sear Riley's sophomore brother. 3 tackles for loss, a sack as well, a forced fumble, and 9 tackles. He was unbelievable. The quarterback for Pally, Daniel Hayes, 7 for 10, folks, with 175 yards and 3 touchdowns. They just can't be stopped. They could be one of the best teams in the section.
You were at the San Pedro game this past weekend, Keith. They're number 2. They stayed at number 2. A big win over Grant. That offense was rolling.
Oh, absolutely. The running game just cannot be stopped. Offensive line also showed flashes of greatness. Grant doesn't have a JV team, so they're a little bit of a weaker opponent, but still shutting them out at halftime and up by at least 40 points. That's just great football right there.
Number 1, it is Narbonne. Even though they lose to Long Beach Poly 14-10, we're going to keep them at number 1. Very, very good effort from the defense in that game. Offensively, the team struggled. Jamar Jefferson made his debut after having a sit-out week 1 against Sarah because of transfer issues. He looked great in that game, but Jalen Chapman continues to struggle, and you don't want to blame him too much. He's lost a lot of receivers, and the teams he's going up against are very, very tough. But Narbonne, let's be honest, in their 2 games, they've struggled to move the ball, so that's an issue for him. But defensively, that's the best defense in the LA City section by a mile, and that defense, I think, is going to keep them at number 1 throughout the season.
Yeah, and not to mention Jefferson and their running attack should really propel them when Chapman does slip up.
So that's your top 10. To recap, Torres 10, 9 Venice, 8 Banning, 7 Carson, 6 Westchester, 5 Crenshaw, 4 Dorsey, 3 Palisades, 2 San Pedro, and at number 1, Narbonne returns. So Keith, let's move now to our game ball segment. Who had the best games in week 2? Which players are we going to shout out here? I'll start with you.
All right, so my game balls for this week have to go to 2 players from San Pedro, Sean Davenport as well as Corey Fasto. They both had fantastic games, whether it was returning punts or having huge hits, tackling on the defensive side of the ball. Both of them were key components for San Pedro's win over Grant as well. Davenport had a punt return. They could both do it all. I see them going far this season.
You mentioned San Pedro. Check out the highlights from their win over Grant on our website, scprepinsider.com, and on YouTube. That was a big win, and put together a nice clip that you shot. Thank you so much. Online, so check them out. Game balls for me. First, you got to go with Bryson Tremaine, the receiver for Venice. He also plays on the defensive side. He had 2 touchdowns in this game, his first 2 of the year. They beat El Camino Real. Very, very tight contest going into the end of that one. Without Tremaine, Venice doesn't even get close in this one. So shout out to Bryson Tremaine. You get a game ball for me. My other game ball goes to Logan Taylor from Narbonne. He had a pick. He was hurdling defenders against Long Beach Poly. Even though Narbonne came up short, Logan Taylor was a player who stuck out. So Bryson Tremaine and Logan Taylor, you guys get game balls from me. Congratulations. Keep up the good work. Picks, the game of the week this week, Keith. It's Serra against Dorsey, so we'll pick that one last. That's a game we'll preview as well, so hold on. We're going to pick 2 other games before we get to that one, and we'll break that one down a little bit. Starting with Fairfax and Crenshaw, we're going to have our own Alex Scar at that game. I like Crenshaw in this one. I think Fairfax, although they have a good quarterback in Scott Harris, Crenshaw's just going to be too much fun. I'm picking Crenshaw in that game.
Yeah, I think the Crenshaw defense will really show up in that game, provide them with the win.
And the other game I'd like to pick, the one you'll be at, Garfield against Harvard Westlake. It's tough to pick against Harvard Westlake right now. They've been feasting on the LA section, so I'm going to take them.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with you on that one. Although you hate to root against Garfield at Garfield, I think Harvard Westlake just has too much talent on their roster to lose.
On to the game of the week. It's Serra against Dorsey. I saw Serra against Narbonne, and I'll be honest with you, Serra should have won the game. At Narbonne, they ended up losing a very, very close one, 17-14, but that defense is legit. I talk about how good the Narbonne defense is. The Serra defense is just as good, if not a little bit better. So it's going to be tough for Dorsey. It's on the road.
Yeah.
Dorsey's offense really didn't perform too well in week 1 against Calabasas. So I'm going to pick Serra, but Keith, I know you have some different thoughts.
Yeah, this is my upset of the week, I guess you could say. I'm actually picking Dorsey in this game over Serra just because of the fact they've had some weeks to rest. And I think that week 1 game against Calabasas obviously was very telling. The offensive line, a lot of issues. The center to quarterback snap was not there all night. They had multiple fumbles as well, multiple offensive line penalties called. That said, I think that they regroup as a team. They mentally prepare for this game. It's probably one of the biggest games on the schedule. Apologies for the street noise here. We're here, by the way, at Manual Arts High School, the home of 16 CIF titles. One of the winningest teams in the section.
Rich history, rich tradition.
That said, Dorsey also has a rich tradition, as does Serra. But yeah, I think Juwan Collins will be the X factor in that game, and I see him going for probably over 100 yards.
That's going to do it for the Week 3 preview podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Southern California Prep Insider. Check us out on Twitter at scprepinsiderla and online at scprepinsider.com. We'll see you next time.